Alrighty. Hello, everybody. For those of you who are rejoining, welcome back. That was a much longer break than expected, but life has a way of having many funny little changes going on. For example, I am now CEO of Spare Brained Ideas. So the nice thing is that the company is all about making tools and everything for the community. So that gives me a little more time that I can do this because it is a tool for the community. So that's nice. And today's episode is going to be a continuing of where we had left off by starting with where did we leave off? For those of you who have not watched before, the idea behind the Biggening Corporation was we were making a game with Business Central. It's a silly idea, but I like it. And over at my GitHub account, I do have a repo for the Biggening Corporation, including the doc folder that has our documentation about how the project was envisioned. And the core concept of this is that it is a game that is multiplayer, in that each person who is competing in a given season runs a business entity within this framework. And all of the work within the company has to be done by bots. And there are some constraints around what the bots are capable of doing and what parts of the system that they are capable of using. We were basically slowly but surely building all the mechanics for that. And it's been some time. As you can see, the last commit on this was October. So, the good news for anyone joining in for the first time now is that I don't remember where we were either. So today's episode is going to be all about learning where did we leave off. For example, apparently the last commit that was done on this was some of our beginnings of doing some code comp cleaning and checking through things. Apparently we left off on episode 42. So we'll probably go ahead and reset that in some sort of useful fashion, but that's okay. I also will be doing a lot more work this season off camera. Last year, the format for this was that I did a lot of the development on stream, regardless of how mundane or boring it was, because it was about teaching some of the basics. So if you want to revisit some of the core concepts of how to create basic tables and pages, how keys and connections between tables work, I would encourage you to go back through the archives and watch some of the earlier episodes. The bright side to that format is you didn't miss anything. The downside to that format is that, it was anywhere from an hour to 3 hours per session, and it was lots of days a week. So there was a lot of time that we were covering. Some folks followed right along and joined with all of it. So this time around, I'm going to do a lot more of setting the goals for our next episode. Our next episode will be Monday next week, same time. So we're going to keep it to a once a week structure and produce episodes where typically those episodes are going to include a lot more of the time-lapse style that I did in a couple of episodes, where some of the grunt work of just building objects and things like that, we don't need to show every second of that on camera. We can focus more on the conceptual things. So with that said, I have a lot of things that I'm going to be doing as maintenance before the next episode. I just had popped open the code and made sure that the the instance that this was running in still worked. And it's back on 16 CU3, which those of you who know your BC versions knows that's quite a while ago. We're, I believe 18 CU1 might have been dropping today. I don't... There was something that held up with CU1 not coming along in quite the time frame. I'm going to be updating the platform that we're using. Because I'm relying a significant amount on setup and data, this isn't living in a Docker, it's living on an on-prem instance. So I need to do an upgrade special. I probably am going to record the process of taking a 16 and moving it up to 18, but I am not going to be putting that on here on the stream. That'll be something available to our Patreon supporters because we have one of those now. So if you're the kind of person who wants to see how do you do a BC upgrade for on-prem, well, then there'll be a separate recording over on our Patreon. So that's fun. Let's see here. Other odds and ends going on. Let's remove some of our screen clutter there. Cool. So where we left off with things, we have many, many objects. If we go to our handy dandy AL Studio, and I believe I have home shut off on my AL Studio as an automatic startup. We do have some fun things that we need to encourage the program to look at. For example, Grammarly is trying to fix my app.json punctuation. I appreciate the help, but no thank you. Okay, so we had created 120 objects in our workspace. And I don't believe that we have fully turned on CodeCop for this. So right now this is not cloud compatible, I think. So we're going to have to fix that. I've currently only got English translations, and that's okay for the moment. We will be working on that. I'm expecting that as we get closer to a first playable release, that some folks will go ahead and do pull requests for some translation files. So that'll be fun. Okay, and let's look a little around the infrastructure to get both me back up to speed and for any new watchers up to speed as to what was going on here. So in our instance here, we have a core concept to this is that when each player is created by the system administrator, they're going to get a company. And that company has to have some basic information set up. So we had created a role center for the system administrator to easily see the different companies that are in the system and the setup tables across those different key tables. Across the different companies. So I'm guessing the missing display name, which would look like it was a bug in process, the display name is missing. But if we go to our company list, we can see that we had created an alpha, beta, and gamma set of testing companies. So whenever a company is created in this database, it copies all of the settings from this master company over into the others. And that way we can have consistent GL accounts and posting groups and things like that across all the different entities. Makes sense. I know that we had sketched out some different ideas for what the role centers needed to be. Makes sense. Let's go into a player role center. I don't remember what's on it. I'm not sure a whole lot. I think some basic statistics about bots at the moment. Okay, so that makes sense. We have some our current wealth and our bots. Now we also have a list of location and the bots that can be assigned and everything. And if we take a look at our bot list, we can see we had created some bots of the different types. So that's cool. So here we have a bot that, interesting, the bot list is just straight up a list. Okay, all right. So as each of the companies are running along and the job queue is ticking over based on the in-game days, the bots consume a certain amount of power every day, and they're able to do a certain amount of operations each day. Depending on the bot type, depends on what the results of those operations are. For example, the sales bots would create sales orders, purchase bots would create purchase orders. The inventory basic bots are able to do receiving and shipping operations. And then let's see, marketing is utilized to generate new additional customers. So that way we can continuously increase the demand on sales, potentially affecting prices in the long run, I think was the goal. And the research bots allow us to gain research points, which was something, if those watching along are used to playing lots of different games, many games have different research trees that allow them to unlock different perks. And that was where, in our framework, we were planning to have unlockable upgrades that allow you to decrease the power cost per day or maybe increase the number of operations per day. So those all came around the bot types. All of the system is running around job queues. So if we go to the job queue entry here, we're going to have lots of these in an error status because they've been offline for months and months and months, waiting for us to come back. Yeah, so some various issues. That's fine. So what we have is in the master company, we have a job queue that is triggering the heartbeat. And that heartbeat event updates all of the company information for all of the non-master companies to let the player heartbeat listeners know that a in-game day has changed. So that was that. And if we go back to our master data and go to our beginning setup, I believe it's game setup. Yep, BCS. And most of the search, I think we left a BCS, Beginning Corporation Systems. Not sure. We had the functionality where we could choose what the game date was and whether or not the game was flagged as active. And this was a simple way for the system administrator to allow all the job queues to continue to run, but to flag that the game should not proceed. And the way that we were handling that is that the game... the amount of time that passed in-game varied based on how many ticks and things like that. So let's go look at our structure of this, because we've got a lot of objects here. So let's see what's going on. Just to get us back up to speed. Okay, so tidying things up a little bit. Okay, so in our very big pile of things, we have within the handling of things, we've got the master company. That's right. We have some things around season management. So that way we can keep track of each season as a separate set of data. Because after all, the concept here is that you might play for a month or maybe 3 months, and you want to keep track on a per season basis of who won and what was the strategies, how did they potentially do some things. So we archive a lot of data using the seasons functionality, like price and trades archive and all that sort of thing. Then here in the game setup, we have lots of configuration settings, so many. Most of those are exposed in the different fast tabs. That makes sense. And then here, for example, is our master heartbeat code unit, where whenever the job queue ran, that treated it as a bump of a day. So if we go look in our master company here for the master heartbeat, job queue, which I'm astonished it's not in an error state. The schedule of this is number of minutes between run, 10. So the way this is configured right now is that every 10 minutes is an in-game day. So that way, over the course of an actual real-life month, it's potentially lots of years. And I think that's a fun way to do that. It gives something to go check in on every few minutes or so. Um, a lot of the core concepts of this game came from incremental games and are influenced by old boards, bulletin board style games, way back when, where you have a little bit of play you do a lot of the time, slowly over the course of the day. But things will keep happening even if you aren't able to jump in. So, what we have is, apologies, when the job queue runs in the master company, it fires off a heartbeat event, and that heartbeat event is subscribed to by some of the different player heartbeat code units. And that's what triggers the actual activity to run. And if we come into the player company, player heartbeat listener. Okay, so it's looking for a current game date. If this has been ticked up, if the current game date is not the setup game date, then we can see that something has happened, and we also built in some fault tolerance that if something went wrong with the job queue and it wasn't detected for an hour and a half, this theoretically would chug through and catch up on the missed number of days. So if one company glitched out and there was missing some setup information or there was an issue, that player wouldn't basically be penalized for the season. They get all of those missed days accumulating. So that makes sense. Okay. Then we had also built into our framework here. Come back here. This is just an example bot in the master company. We had also built into the bot management system, the power usage ledger. This was going to create all of the charge entries that the players will be charged on a regular basis. So we can see here that we've got a player charge code unit, and what this does is it creates general journals behind the scenes to automatically charge the correct power accounts by the charge amount. And that would be the case for, it could be materials, it could be for price, and we also had a whole lot of work around the power posting, so that way people could potentially analyze, how was their power use. Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. It's been a while since I've done a lot of monologuing, and it's hard not to yawn. So let's see. Right. There's so much here. We also had logic around the research system. We also have logic around prospects. If a purchasing bot was not assigned to create purchase orders based on the demand usage of your given settings, they would attempt to find suppliers that had better trades or different trades or whatever have you. And there were also marketing bots that would potentially try to find customers and all that sort of thing. And all of that logic is handled in our bot dispatcher. So we've got a lot of code living in this bots folder. A significant amount of them are related around being able to have templates and to be able to purchase bots. We'll go look at that in just a second because I was pretty happy with how that wizard came out. And we also have the different dispatchers for all of the different types. I think this was my beginning of attempting to do interfaces, maybe? Not really sure. Doesn't look like it. No? Okay. Just a big giant case statement. So we have logic in each of the bot types to handle different operations. Some of them we haven't done anything with yet. So for example, here the assembly bot just reports back, I would be doing assembly results. Okay, but if we go look at our sales bot, there's a good chunk of code here. Every time this bot runs, based on the settings of this bot and the tier that it is involved at, it would potentially look to see, okay, I'm assigned to place orders for this customer. Based on my level and the customer interests, what items do they potentially want to buy? We get the current market price, which is going to be something that is going to fluctuate, so we can see here. And players are able to set some constraints of what is the minimum sales price before they'll be willing to sell. And the intended workflow of this is that as you buy things, the price goes up. As you sell things, the price comes down. Very rudimentary demand, supply and demand systems. But that's the game of letting you decide, do you want to try to flush everyone out of the market, or do you want the demand to build up and that sort of thing? So there's some logic around that. And these sales headers would create lines, and based on the bot tier, we create some different sales lines, and away it goes. I'm trying to remember exactly what the posting logic around this was, because that's always fun too. So we're creating sales orders at the bot level, but I don't believe we do posting during this because that is handled by our good friend, the inventory basic bot. Now, the way that we had differentiated the different bot templates in our Biggening Corporation Season 1 was that inventory basic bots do basic ship and receive, and that's it. And then later we're going to have the inventory advanced who do warehousing. And the differentiation around this is that we're going to have location templates, which we did create in our logic here. And we put in some constraints in the game setup around how much inventory a given location can carry based on its type. So for example, a basic location has a cap on how many bots they can have and a cap of how much inventory. And the idea behind this is that potentially players need to balance the, do I get, 10 more basic locations or just one advanced? There's some mix and match, and the throughput on the advanced location is going to be much higher, but the cost will be higher as well. So that makes sense. Okay. And our inventory bot here is the one doing the shipping. So we had the bot would go through and attempt to do different operations. It tried to do shipping first, if it could possibly do shipping first. Let's see. And then we would also do work date based logic, try to get out backlogged items and try to receive back things. So we've got handle receipt functionality to post the receipt. We've got some handling around handle shipment, and I do see that we're doing invoice false when we post shipment, so I don't remember exactly where our workflow was that we did the invoicing step, but I know we had to write that, so we'll find it. That's fine. Right, so if we come look at our workflow in a test company here, Alpha, sure. We had created a workflow for buying a bot, and we choose the different types, so we could say purchasing, and here we can see that we had created some templates to enable players to choose different price points, and we had also, I thought, I was just checking through, we had created the framework around having there potentially be material cost as well. So for example, the price is $2,500, but we may also have had some inventory aspect of that, like we had to have some on-hand requirements. And the nice thing about this was that, let's see, I'm very surprised. Must not have set that up all the way. So you can see that by choosing different types, we can get our different templates, and that worked pretty well. And based on the requirements here, when we go to the next, we get a resource checklist to see, are we short of anything? So for example, when I picked this bot that requires a price of 1,000 units, we only have 4,500 units on hand, so this red flagged and we could not proceed. But we could go ahead and select our 500, and everything here was all clear, so we could go on and proceed. So we'll say okay to that. And here in the bot process, bots are always assigned to different things based on what we're doing. Let's see here. So for example, a purchasing bot could be unassigned if we want it to look for new suppliers. So if we were instead to go sales, and we say a sales bot, and now instead of sales related, we would potentially get customers that we would assign the sales bot to. But we don't have any customers in there, so all right. Now, so that wizard came out pretty nice. We had the purchase wizard page, and this has a bunch of sub pages on it that comes from the resource checklist table. If we go look in our master company at the bot templates, that'll give us a sense of where were we with that. Let's see, BCS. Nice thing is if we did that for everything. So if we look at our research list, season list, okay, I thought we did. Bot template. That one we did not. Okay, so we had the different templates of some of the different types. Here's where the list was coming from that we were presenting to a user based on our enumerator for the bot type. And here was where we potentially would have been able to select materials. And this is where we would be, so this already gives me my first hint of where we were when we left. This little list is a tiny fraction of all of the items that we were going to have. So that's one of the places where we left off. Okay, so now if we said that this particular bot requires 20 of this wood parts and one simple circuit, something like that, then to do the purchasing of this bot, you would need to have a nice little bug there. This materials, I believe, is a flow field, and it did not recalculate, or it just doesn't calculate at all. We'll see. Okay, so there's some to do there. Real quick, let's pop into our document. For those of you who don't have it, I recommend having a PDF viewer extension in your Visual Studio Code. Boy, does that help. Makes it nice and simple. I think I have a very simple one, this one from Tomiko 1207. Real simple, just lets me view a PDF. Nothing crazy. So this gave us our basic rules and all that sort of thing. And importantly, we also have our item planning, which I don't know if I showed on camera before. And that must be an old document, because that is not everything. Cool. All right. Good to know. All right. Let's see. So, looking through all the different pieces, that gives me a good sense of where we were. So we've got different bot activity logs, so you can, as a player, see what each person, which each bot has been doing in your company. Come on back here. And if we come to bots, we should be able to, so we can navigate the power options, but interestingly we cannot navigate their activity. I know that there is an activity table that we've created behind the scenes. So for example, we can see here that these bots have been idling because they aren't a type that these bots have to be assigned to a customer in the case of the sales and assigned to a location in case of inventory. So we know that these bots are effectively just kind of wasting power because they're idling. Okay. All right. Yeah. Good, good. We had created the standings overview, but clearly there's still some issues around the display name there, given that these are all blank. But that gives us that idea. Item overview, same sort of thing. I don't think we had... that might be one of the places where we were just leaving off when we were working with things. Items are going to be a little bit different in that research is going to unlock different items of different categories, is the intention. I didn't know why that Excel was empty, but that's okay. So I believe we do a lot of jumping between companies in this stream, for those of you who are just joining along. Okay, so we don't have anything in there either. So do we have master items? We do. Okay. So here was the functionality that I had begun to create around the idea of master items, because the item list will be what the player has unlocked. This master item list will be the game's total deck that it can pull from. And we can see here that for the first 6 items, that these are all of the class 1 product posting group. So these are all available at the start, low, medium, high price items. And we can see that some of the class 2 items also have item categories, and we can see that class 3 has category as well. Now, I believe that the design philosophy I was going for with this is going to be that class 2 items are assembly based. They're kit and they can be done by inventory basic bots, and class 3 are going to be our production bots, the actual manufacturing components. I believe that's the idea that we were going with. Let's take a look at that. Yep. Okay, so assembly, some items are not sold directly. Basic logistics can support the assembly tasks, right? Makes sense. And then manufacturer was the highest items. Okay. The research bots are the intended way that we're going to unlock those different categories of items, so that's there. And we have initial price on this. Do we have any other data? Aha, cool. We did have our bill of materials. So for example, this standing desk requires all of these. Okay. And that is what the Excel file was around. Let's see. We had an import master items report. Yep, perfect. And this was reading from the Excel file. And this is where we had the really complex parsing to be able to handle complex items here. Including bill of materials steps. We had not implemented the production routing into the Excel file yet, but we had done the bill of materials. And that's why when we open this up, closed it too soon, we had the support in place already for being able to create a given item, given description, posting group, category. We then had the columns for all of the basic requirements for the class 1 items, and then we had optional support for the class 2, where we could specify a comma and the semicolon. This was obviously me tinkering around and going, when someone asks you to import something crazy, how do you do it? So my hunch is that sometime last year I was probably doing an import a lot like this for a customer, so it's probably based off of Real World Madness. I think this is an extreme version of that, but it's the general idea. Okay, so yeah, that probably was where we were with some of the item creation, but assembly level bots and the class 3 items are definitely further down the road because we had to do some testing around. Can we have market prices go up and down? So for example, we have our market calculation code unit. We had our basic buy and trade. There is a function here to calculate the daily prices based off of the master items. We would go through and see all of the trading volume over the past 2 days. Day before yesterday and yesterday, and we would go, okay, based on the trading volumes and some multipliers in our setting, then we move the price up and down. That makes sense. And then we store kind of a snapshot of those prices over time. So the idea behind this being that we can run the game, and as things are bought and sold, then the price goes up and down, and we'll build a nice beautiful table that allow us to do some forecasting on that. That made sense. Sure. And then also on the item card for players, we did a bunch of UI improvements, but then we also added some things. So for example, we added for players an editable section because we locked down most of the standard fields. We don't want them to reconfigure items. We created, and that's why most of these are visible false. And many of these are editable only if you're the administrator. So then theoretically a player couldn't change it, but someone who is a sysadmin could come in and fix an issue if there was one. We had the ability to say, okay, for this given item at this minimum level, I want to try to aim for this, and the maximum amount of stock or the maximum amount of price that we should have are the following things. So, build up 100 of these unless they go over this much. And then we also created a floor on the sale side to say, never sell them if they go below this price. So that way players could theoretically try to play around with the market. That makes sense. Okay, cool. And let's see, we had some settings on the vendor and customer side around how many orders and maximum quantity that those suppliers could handle in a given day. We have all sorts of fun stuff in when we're farming for prospects of potential new customers and new vendors. We had a randomization pool of fake names that we could pull for the company, because why not? Let's see. And I think that gives a pretty good tour of things. Here's the document posting code unit that handles. I knew it was living somewhere. I think we originally had it in a bot and then refactored that out. That's fine. Okay, yep, because here we're doing the posting the old documents, and here's the code for posting the orders and purchase orders. One of the things to note is that we did not make use of any of the testing libraries in creation of any of this code. It does not require the test libraries, which is interesting, but that's okay. Pardon. Okay, so, and then last piece, as I mentioned, when you farm for prospects, potentially there's a list of ones you might choose to say, okay, I want to convert that prospect because they look good. There's some randomization there in the whenever we generate new prospects, what gets created. And then we also have a research progress table, so that way we can keep track of what is the player researching. And if we go to the research setup, we can look a little bit at what are some of the, yeah, there we go. Cool. Yeah, so here are some of the different research tree configurations, and at some point I think I want to make a nice little control add-in so we can visualize this a little better, because here we have operations research type, and this requires this one to have been unlocked. The player can't even see this one if the prerequisites are not met yet. So that way, there's a nice kind of unfolding progression. And then we put into all of the different potential bonuses that could come from having unlocked the different research and how many points it takes to get there. So let's see. Just looking at operation bonus code is pointing to bot type. Ah, I see. Okay. So this upgrade takes any bots that are based off of the bot template RB9000 and increases their operations per day. So it basically makes them a little Monster Energy drink chugger of a bot. And we could potentially have some research later on that changes the power type per day bonus. Cool. Yep. And then we also created the infrastructure for finding more prospects, finding better prospects. Yep. And unlocking the different category codes. So players potentially need to research into some of the different items that were going to be available in the item catalog of different things. That makes sense. Okay. And I think we had created some framework around some of the research consuming materials as well. So for example, here, this silly thing research requires 1,000 points, or requires this to be unlocked. It requires 1,000 points. And we could also say that it requires some materials that, and we clearly hadn't finished hooking this up yet. Maybe it consumes 100 of these items as well. So some of the materials are going to be used by players on the stuff for the players. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Clearly it's not done. All right. Cool. And that's pretty good. We've got the research table, and we had, it's interesting to me that we've got some things research related per player company, per market, but that's fine. Okay, and we've got the different season functionality. I don't know how much. There we go. So we had functionality to create new seasons. We can see that 3 participants are in this active season. Okay. All right. Makes sense. Cool. I'm just seeing if there's anything else. I mean, that's a lot. Another thing about all this, we do not have any testing functionality around any of this. I think right as we were wrapping up the season, I was looking at the idea of, is it feasible to do testing code units for all of this? And I do have stamped from September, the very, very beginning of some code units for creating company tests. But, oof, yeah, very little to it. If you haven't done it already, it is so helpful. AL files are just text files, so there's no reason not to have your Explorer just preview them for you. That makes life so much easier when you're just trying to go, what do I have here? Can strongly recommend doing that. And then same for JSON, but it looks like I haven't done that on this machine. So, yeah. Okay. So I don't anticipate trying to spend any real heavy on-screen time producing test code units. Not at this particular point. It looks like where we're at is I need to finish the item importing system. I need to populate our master item tables with some more data because we had very few items in there. We had just the core ones and then some of the assembly. Let's see, master item. Yep, so I had definitely sketched out a lot more class 2 and class 3 items to be made. So there's and we had some loose strategies around the idea of when we start doing some testing and debugging of the different playtests, what are the strategies that some of the different bots are going to use. I still have my screenshot from September. We were going to play a game of having Alpha mix lots of items and then just expand as big of a warehouse capacity as they can possibly get. And then Beta was going to focus on low price, big volume, and then we were going to play test with Gamma focusing on building up and researching into the highest price items and see how those different strategies balanced against each other, because I have no idea. Let's see, and we had some notes from that September episode as well. There's nothing when you log into the system to see that the job queue had an issue. There's no notification. We have a zero notification engine whatsoever. There's no email notifications. And I was holding off on that on purpose in the fall because I knew that they were rewriting the email engine. So we're going to be doing some stuff around that because to me it makes sense to get a real world potential daily status if you want, or a weekly status update to see what are the standings and that sort of thing. Let's see. So if we go look at player company again. Yeah, so there's nothing on the role center or anywhere to indicate that something has gone wrong with the situation here. The job queue in this case is way out of date. It's had an error status probably for half a year. So yeah, there's nothing to warn the player that something has gone wrong. There's nothing to warn the system administrator. I think we experienced a little bit around the snapshotting system deadlocking, so we got to check how our table locking is working. And that's a simple matter of if we fire a heartbeat and all 20 companies want to insert a record into that snapshot table, you can't have them all try to go through the door at the same time. So we're going to think about that. We had it set up where prospects were being farmed and they were finding a few every in-game day, which meant when you came back 24 hours after your first setup, you ended up with a list that was hundreds long. But at the same time, the first several in-game hours, you didn't have any real customers or vendors that were of good value. So what we need to do is update our initial generation of a new season with all the players and everything. Everyone needs to have at least a few basic customers and vendors that handle all of the basic items. I think that's going to help make sure that right out of the gate there's something for you to be doing. And then yeah, we don't have any research. We just had those 4 playtest versions of it. We had a whole bunch of things that these aren't in the role center as a player. Like, well, why can't I see what the bot's activity has been in the past 24 hours? We have a nice ledger for that. If we go look at our player company bot activity log table, shouldn't we be able to see, what the activity? That would be a fun thing, to just see a chart of my activity versus profit. Like, are they helping? What's the sitch there? Same for seeing research progress. And then we had the, like, where the heck are all the items? So I'm going to try to address a bunch of these issues between now and next week, at least getting the items set up and configured, and getting some of the research tables configured. And then we should be able to start taking another round at playtesting with this. I'm going to reset the season once I've got that core data in there. And I will probably recruit a couple of very active members from the community. I can think of 2 off the top of my head that I will recruit to come play in our first alpha test season here. So that way there's some actual people who are using it besides me. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and we can potentially get some more value out of that. And as we get into beta, I'll probably open it up to more people, and I will probably do that through Patreon supporters. So you're going to hear me talk about that a lot. Okay, well, that's pretty fun. I think we've now done a pretty decent tour of where the heck were we. There is a lot here. There is still a lot to do. The major things that we need to handle are getting the assembly bots online, getting the warehouse level bots online, and handling the manufacturing side of things. If we take care of those 3 bot types and we get research in there, we get items in there, a lot of the stuff beyond that is going to be, I won't say fluff, but it's all nice to haves rather than core functionality. And sometime in the next week or 2, we'll also sketch out what sort of concept are we looking for around maybe creating APIs to be able to do Power BI against it. What sort of automations do we want to send? I'm really keen to get my hand into Power Automate, so maybe instead of doing daily digests out of here in an email sort of fashion, maybe we'll look at doing a Power Automate that runs once a day to summarize information from the APIs that we create and send that out. Power Automate is built to work with Business Central Cloud. However, it certainly can work with any API endpoints, such as the ones we can build in BC. So I think there's a lot of great functionality that we're going to expand on in the next few weeks. And one of the other fun things out of this is that once we've got a few more of the basics around the setup and configuration, people could theoretically use this to generate big giant piles of test data. And we'll probably put together some instructions later this summer on how can you use this engine to generate a test company to test things out. Speaking of which, that leads nicely into I will be doing a separate stream on Wednesdays that is a brand new project. If you have not been following along, then I don't blame you. But we are going to have on Wednesday afternoon a new project called Cronus Foundations. And we're going to be making use of a lot of the same ideas of the Biggening Corporation, but the idea behind this is that we are creating a pipeline-friendly, extendable-friendly demo data generation toolkit where for these 5 different companies, you can generate multiple years worth of transactional data that is more representative of the 5 different business types, and execute that as part of a development pipeline, execute that as part of a CI/CD testing pipeline, and use this consistent pile of data as a baseline for all manner of things such as training and demos and that sort of thing. And this is going to be something that I'm going to be building on Wednesdays and between sessions, much like this. And we are going to start out with, I believe, yeah, the plays of the thing. This is just going to be buying and selling toys, and we're going to do some functionality around different key parts and whatnot. Yeah, that'll be very familiar to those of you who followed along with this. However, we're going to be doing a fair bit more around, instead of dynamically generated content, we are going to be implementing extensible, repeatable content. So for example, generating 50 companies, the customers, the exact same way every time, with some variations, some different posting groups, some different discount groups, all that sort of thing, and then creating transactions against it, but doing so in a way that you can do eventing hooks to add your ISV data to those transactions, to those setup tables and whatnot. A little bit different of an approach than the way we have to do things today, which is just take the Cronus data and on install code units populate past data. So that's going to be all sorts of fun. I'm looking greatly forward to it. That's going to wrap it up today. I'm going to get research and items between now and next time, and I'm going to reach out and contact a couple of players to join in, and we'll get some early beginning test work done next week. And I also need to spend some time making the roll centers a little friendlier. A big part of this is that I want to be able to, me personally, I would like to be able to play this on my phone against other BC company players. So turn it into a fun little competitive market trading game against some of the BC community. If you have not already joined it, eventually there will be a Discord channel just about this little game for people who are actively participating and want to talk about the different seasons of this as things are coming. I probably will run it as 2 months per season once we're open and people are publicly participating. It's going to be sort of fun to see how many people want to try a hand at using Business Central to compete with each other. So lots of fun stuff. I'll probably have to do alpha and beta testing in July, August, and wait June, July, August, and then September might be our first public season once everyone's back from vacation and everything. So that'll be fun. All right, guys. Well, it has been a pleasure rejoining you, and hopefully I'll get a little more practice at not trying to yawn while talking. My business associate and partner reminded me a long time ago, pause, breathe, and that's part of it. So, all right, I will see you guys on Wednesday, and we'll have all of these up on YouTube after. So if you miss an episode, like I said, we're going to keep them nice and shorter focused, so it's easy to keep watching and jumping in on things. Thank you all for watching. Take care.